Welcome back. We're glad you're watching Morning Express. Time now for our newsroom chat. And in studio this morning, I'm joined by three individuals. To my immediate left, we have Crispus Yankem, media commentator. Many thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks.
We also have Susan Auma, governance consultant. Many thanks for joining us. As well as Patrick Gathara, a communication consultant. Many thanks for joining us, guys.
Nice to be here.
So we have a lot to discuss this morning. Let's get right to it. The election laws amendments currently going on before the Senate Legal Affairs Committee, which is receiving submissions on what members of the public think of these laws. But yesterday we had Royal Services, Media Services on SK Macharia bring out a 10-year dispute, saying that Raila Odinga won the 2007 elections. Let's begin with you, Yankem. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, thanks, Michelle. Being a new year, I think I would want to grab this opportunity, first of all, to wish the great people of the Republic of Kenya a happy new year and a prosperous one, for that matter, 2017. Definitely has got a lot of expectations. But having said that, I think it is very unfortunate that we've crossed onto the new year with our bad habits. One of them is actually the insecurity question. The other one is the water shortage. The other one is the biting hunger in Turkana. I think these are great questions that we need to focus on as a country. Right. But having said that, let me come back to your question. I think the debate on electoral amendment laws or election laws amendment bill is actually coming too late in the hour. It is not a debate that we should be having at this particular time when we are staring at a serious electioneering year of that nature. I think as a country right now, we should be going through our checklist and finding out exactly what we have done and what we haven't done as far as this year's election is concerned. Having said that, I think the Senate must be commended really for having stolen the show and trying to dissipate the political temperatures that were rising last year. You remember CORD had declared that today was going to be the day that they were going to go back to the streets and ensure that the acrimonious debate that we had in the National Assembly is taken to a whole new level as far as the election laws are concerned. But the submissions by SK Macharia and the other stakeholders, I think those are welcome remarks. We hope that tomorrow when the Senate is reconvenes for a special session, they're going to look at all the submissions, not just SK Macharia submission, but all other submissions that have been filed by all the stakeholders, including individual Kenyans, on this particular matter. Yes.
And Susan, let's hear from you, of course, with what SK Macharia said. But what are your thoughts on the whole process by the Senate Legal Affairs Committee?
First of all, I must join my colleague Crispus in wishing Kenyans a very prosperous 2017. You know, 2017 has been that year that has been much talked about. I think we started talking about it 4 years ago, and every time 2017, 2017, now it's here with us, and we have to make use of it, and we just have to ensure as Kenyans that in December 2017 we'll have our country in one, not disintegrated. And so coming back to what is happening right now, today I tend to agree with him. I think this is just a delaying tactic, because I don't know why we should be debating this now. Kenya has shown the world that is a digital, and we are digitalized. The government that is in place today calls itself a digital government. So we're even giving class 1 laptops. So I don't know why. Everything is digital.
Driving license, education.
We're having people coming to Kenya to learn about mobile. I'm even wondering why we should not even be voting on mobile, using our mobile phones. I mean, it's possible. So I tend to think there is some motives, either to try and delay this process, but I think it's sad that you are even discussing this now. But like he said, I think what Senate did is commendable. And now if actually they were handling issues the way we've seen them come out strongly, then Kenyans will see that actually it even deserves to be the upper house. We should be vetting you know, all those decisions that are made, which should be vetoing decisions which are made by the National Assembly. And I think this is what Kenyans have been waiting to see Senate, you know, having such a character.
Right.
So, but again, what SK Macharia said is not new. I mean, Kenyans know who won the election in 2007. And the media houses will bear the, I mean, they had the evidence and they will bear witness. It's unfortunate that we only want to approach media houses when we want them to give us publicity, but we do not consider them as institutions that are also part of Kenya and which can be able to help us in making this good decisions when we are having a stalemate like what we had in 2007. Because if IEBC had failed, even in the last election, what happened? I mean, you just need to go to media houses because you have reporters, you have infrastructures all over, in each and every polling station, you are everywhere. How come we don't reach out to media house and say, Lacey, like you saw the US election, what happened? I mean, CNN will cast the news live, I mean, Fox, and within 2-3 hours, people will know who is winning and who is not. I don't know why we do not give media that credibility and why we don't also consider them as a good source.
Right. But Patrick, over to you. 2017 general elections comes exactly 10 years after the 2007-2008 debacle. All eyes now are on the Kenyan electoral process. And like Susan Yankem said, it's a bit too late in the hour to be discussing these election law amendments. And so Kenyans decided, hey, let's just put a group of religious leaders to mediate between Jubilee and CORD, which is probably going to fast-track this process because we expected them to be neutral. But just the other day, we saw a section of religious leaders now back Jubilee. Do you think this is an issue, first of all, that is being taken out of context? Do they have the right to do that?
Well, they are Kenyans to begin with, so they've got a right to participate, to have actually their views on this. When you say Kenyans agreed to have them mediate, I don't think that's actually accurate. That's just how it's worked out, and we know historically this is a role that they've played for a while, you know, whenever we've got this huge dispute on people. But I do agree that the whole debate is coming late in the day. I think that it's symptomatic of the fact that we haven't seriously or taken seriously the need to reform, to audit how our systems have worked, and to fundamentally reform them. I think the presentation by Macharia was actually quite enlightening. When you look at it, he spoke about elections starting from 1992. And in essence, what he was saying is in most of our elections, with the exception of the 2002 elections, the winners have been shortchanged. You know, and we've never gone back and asked, you know, what is going wrong with the systems and what actually needs changing, and actually doing a full audit of the system. What the exercise we're engaged in now only looks at a very small part of it. And the only question is asked is what happens if the voter identification fails or electronic transmission of results fails. You know. But this happened in 2013. You know, it's not new. You know, and don't forget, even the insistence that we need manual backups, is a bit disingenuous, because in 2013, when the identification failed, they used printouts of the BVR register. You know, the very same thing they're saying they need now a law to do. So
right.
Are they saying that what was done in 2013 was illegal? You know, if it was legal, then what is stopping it now? The other thing is we've got, I think for the media itself, we really need to question how we've approached this. You've got the head of, the owner, one of the proprietors of a media house saying, I've got evidence that the 2007 election was stolen. You know, I've got the data to show it. Yet you remember we had a Kriegler commission that came out and told us, well, actually we can't say who won. Is it that they never went to SK Macharia and asked him, do you have this data? Or is it that he never went to them and said, well, here is the data that I have? And him being a proprietor of a media house, how come the media house did not follow up that story? afterwards? Why are we hearing it now, 10 years later, at a parliamentary committee? Why haven't we had a series of stories? This is what went wrong. Here is the evidence we have that the election was stolen. So I think even as a media fraternity, we've sort of stayed away from discussing these issues, from interrogating what went wrong during elections. As I've said, again, as a final point, we failed to audit 2013, the election. So right now, we're dealing with a tiny bit of the failure of systems. But if you think of it as a whole system thing, there is very many things we need to change. We need to start looking at timelines. Yesterday, Githumugai spoke about what would happen if we overrun our timelines. I think IEBC has 120 days before the election to actually procure and install the technology for the election. That's in April. They already can't procure because of court orders that have stopped it. So what happens if we overrun it? We need to start thinking about that. We need to start thinking about laws that were cited yesterday by Mutula Kilonzo about the IEBC, for example, having the power to stop media from broadcasting things to do with the elections, both in the IEBC Act and in the Elections Act. Do we need to change those so that media can actually report and act as a check on IEBC providing information, so that when what is announced at the polling stations turns out to be different from what's at the transmission station? We're not just dependent on IEBC systems, but we've got an independent reporting structure that the media can use to call elections. Don't forget, SKA said that the media has the capacity to do this, that they have done it before. In 2002, they were actually ahead of the IEBC in calling the election. There's no reason why they can't do it now. So the laws that are there to stop the media doing this, where the IEBC can issue directives to the press, where the IEBC can say, you can't report this or you can't report the other, those are laws that need to be changed, amongst another huge gamut of laws dealing with things like the presidential petition, whether the IEBC is compelled to actually give you its documents if you want to launch a petition. Remember Raila Odinga again when he sued last year, in the last election, 2013. One of the reasons why his petition ran over time is IEBC refused to give him his documents and he had to take them to court. We haven't changed that law. We haven't increased the time for the Supreme Court has to do the petition. It's still the 14 days. Still IEBC can say, no, we're not giving you the documents and you've got to take us to court. So we need to look at this in a more holistic fashion and actually deal with the entire system that is problematic, as opposed to just looking at these few things that animate the politicians.
Right, and of course, there's a lot of issues you've mentioned. The question there will also be, do we have enough time to start thinking and putting all those issues into place? But even as we say that, Senate will tomorrow hold a special session to finalize this debate, and so Kenyans will find out whether these controversial laws will be upheld or not. Senate is rather optimistic about the whole situation, but this has two outcomes. It's just, it's either going to quell political temperatures or going to rise them even further, with the opposition threatening mass protests. Yankem, let's talk about the either or. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there are quite a lot of expectations as far as the Senate outcome is concerned. Remember, the Senate actually decided to take a different direction as opposed to what many expected, because we know actually the Jubilee Party has got the majority of senators in that upper house, so to speak. But again, like I said before, I think there is a lot of dishonesty as far as this matter is concerned. Right. What we are seeing is the political class from speaking from both sides of their mouth, because they are not honest. When you look at it, this is actually the greatest impunity on the people of Kenya. One wonders where they were before last year, when the selection panel, not the selection panel, when the Parliamentary Select Committee that was actually looking at the reforms in the IEBC came up with their report. How come we did not see a lot of debate on that matter? Right. They decided to pass the proposals that were put forth by that committee that was chaired by Orengo and Kiraito Murungi. The question is, why debate this thing right now? I think Kenyans need actually to look at the political class and ask those serious questions. Because why should we be setting up a country on an election year? I think it is very unfortunate. But going forward, I've seen a lot of submissions, like we've said before, by SK Macharia, by the Council of Governors, by the public. I think tomorrow when the Senate reconvenes, they'll look at all the entire issues that have been put forth by these various stakeholders with a tooth comb and give us a verdict that is meaning well for every common person of this country. Because what we need now to see from the Senate is that way forward that is appealing to everybody, that is not raising political temperatures, but for the media. I think what I haven't seen is actually, because we, as a country right now, the debate is around manual backup. The media, what you guys need to do is now to try and break it down the story. Break down the story and tell us, this manual backup, how does it work? How come as a country, despite our digital advancement, we are not able to go fully digital when we are going into the polls? Other countries, how have they been able to deal with this particular matter? Because countries like Ghana, countries like the US, they employ actually electronic system during the last election. And I did not see a lot of questions, save for what the US is talking about, that Russia actually hacked into their system. I really don't know. When you go to other places like Turkana, are they fully covered by the so-called 3Gs? I think the media need to look at these questions and try to break down the story for Kenyans to understand.
All right,
Yes.
all right. And Susan, as it stands, of course, there is still that threat of mass action by the opposition. But as a governance expert, was this really the last resort, mass action?
And after what SK Macharia said, I think it has now gained more ground. You know, because now the opposition believe that what they're asking for is right. Because remember, if somebody came and told you, I know you won, because we could tell, we use satellite phone to tell that you won, we track the results and you won. You know, even if it's 10 years ago. And now somebody's telling you, go back to the manual, you know, backup system, which failed in the last election. Even if you're the one, which one will you go for?
You know, I know it's
you're likely to hold on that stance. So I think in the next 1 week or 2 weeks, we are likely to face difficult times because especially after what SK Macharia said. But then I don't buy this narrative that it's difficult right now, it will be hard to procure, because you see extraordinary times demands extraordinary measures.
Absolutely.
And I think once there is a goodwill from all over, and you can tell from the submissions which were given yesterday, from the civil society, from the faithful groups, even from Kenyans, look at the social media. I mean, Kenyans are wondering, why can't we go electronic? And so, and if Kenyans agree to that, why can't we have it? We can even have it next week. All these things about procurement, court orders will not surface, because the court will have also to look at the public interest, because that one comes first more than anything else. But then also, the question is, like Crispus has asked, what has the Secretariat of IEBC been doing all along? Because some of these things are not even supposed to feature when we have commission. You remember, when you say coming here, we say that people are focusing on just a minute element of the whole electoral process. And a bulk of it is in the Secretariat. The Secretariat has been there drawing taxpayers' money. What have they been doing? Because right now, I think there is people are trying to collude somewhere to push this election. I mean, what you'll hear, because even IEBC has started saying that they may not beat the deadline. Look at the voter, look at what they've given out, the voter education. I don't know who is prepared even for that. So I think somebody somewhere wants to push this election. It could be the National Assembly, by the way.
But, I mean, there's been a lot of finger pointing at the opposition, especially by the presidency, that they want to delay the polls.
They could be. They could be, because you see, Then why all these hurdles?
Let's face it, Michelle. The truth of the matter is, when you speak to the MCA, all the way to the top leadership of this country, nobody is willing to go to the polls in August.
But Kenyans are willing.
You know,
So
apart
the
from
politicians are
Kenyans,
not willing.
the political class, wherever the interest converges, believe you me, they'll always find a way of dealing with it. And we cannot say it is the opposition, we cannot say it is government. All of them are in the same bed.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that is the truth of
All
the
right.
matter. But whether we can not have elections in August is another question altogether. Is it a referendum question on what exactly can ensure that we go to the polls? We do not go to the polls in August. I think that is something that we need to raise and try to look at what the Constitution says. I know there is a lot of arguments whether it is a referendum question or not, but what exactly does the Constitution say as far as that matter is concerned?
Right, of
So
course,
Kenyans ought to be very careful with the political class.
Yeah, we've had the AG say this will be a constitutional crisis if we do not hold elections on August 8th. But Peter, I understand you have something to add to that.
Well, I think firstly, when it comes to election date, I mean, the courts have already ruled on this. The Supreme Court has already said you're mandated to have an election on August 8th. You know, so that's the president has, in his New Year's message, reiterated that you will have the elections there. So there seems to me to be, in terms of the law, that it's clear that we are mandated to do that. The question is, between now and then, what are we able to do to ensure that the poll reaches the standards that are subscribed to in the Constitution, which is essentially it's got to be free, fair, transparent election and credible election. And I think we are quite late, as we said before, on this. I think when it comes to reporting about the current dispute, I think when we speak of electronic and manual systems, etc., we kind of mislead the people, as S.K. Mashai was saying yesterday. This is sort of a combined system. We've got elements of electronics and manual. And I think to a large extent, people are getting confused about what we're talking about. The electronic system that we have is called the integrated electronic electoral system. You know, that one just governs registration of voters using the BVR, identification of voters at the polling station using electronic voter ID, and the transmission of results. And what it transmits are provisional results to the tallying center. And if you go back and look at what Kriegler had said, and then the system that was proposed, was essentially that you register people using your BVR system. When they turn up at the polls, you know, you use the EVID, which is an electronic system that links into the BVR database to confirm that the person in front of you who's asking for a ballot paper, you know, is a real person who's registered. That's why you're taking his retina, that's why you're taking his fingerprints, you know, and stuff like that. You know, then he votes manually, and eventually the votes are counted again manually. But then when it comes to transmitting the results, the forms themselves need to go to IEBC. Those are the actual results, yes. But the electronic transmission system is there to avoid the situations we had, like in 2007, where results would be announced at the polling station, and en route to IEBC, things are being changed, numbers are being cancelled out, etc. So you send out provisional results direct to the IEBC once they are announced. So that then when the paper comes, you know, there's little scope for shenanigans.
Right.
You know. And again, these aren't complex systems. The electronic transmission system is simply a mobile phone with software. That's all it is. You know, it's not a big deal, you know, a big huge thing. That's why I was saying you can actually even use satellite phones, you know, for this, just to have a secure way of transmitting, of this guy transmitting a professional number from the polling station, the presiding officer transmitting a provisional number from the polling station to the tallying station. That's all it does, you know. So these aren't big things. A lot of them did already fail in 2013.
Right.
So we've got, we can go back and look and say, okay, what did we do then when they failed? You know, and you remember all they did is exactly what's being proposed now. They had a printout of the BVR register, that they used then to go after, to decide who was going to vote. Now, that had its problems. As you've heard, we have a situation of 2 million people apparently voting only for the president, and us not being told what happened to the other ballots that they had, of dead people in the roll voting, etc. But some of these are issues that go beyond the current debate, which talks of if the system fails. If the register is already corrupted, you don't fix it by having a manual printout.
Exactly.
Because it's going to be a printout of the already corrupt register.
Right. Register,
So that's another issue that's going. We need to separate it from all and say we've got to deal with the register, yes. But when we talk of EVID and stuff, that has nothing to do with hacking, and all of this stuff. Because all we'll do is we'll print out what's already in the BVR. If it's corrupted, then sorry.
It will still be corrupted.
Yeah, precisely. The manual won't sort that out. So I think we need to be much more clear to people that all we are talking about is a very small piece of the entire election jigsaw. And we can fix those. We can come up with systems, because I think we also need to remember that we put in this electoral system, the integrated electronic electoral system, essentially to cure failures in the manual system.
So we cannot go back to it again.
So we can now argue that the manual system itself is what cures the system that was supposed to fix it. So we've got to think of it in a more holistic way, where we look at how should it actually work, the entire thing. What went wrong in 2013? How did these guys? If the problem was the register, then let's fix the register. Let's not start talking about other things that have nothing to do with the integrity and sanctity of the register itself.
And of course, that's the job of the media to ensure that information is passed out.
Precisely. I think the media has sort of helped obscure the debate rather than enlighten it. And finally, we've got to remember we are not doing this in service of an audit. So essentially what we're doing is ad hoc repairs here and there. But since we haven't done an audit and looked at the system as a whole and seen this is where the gaps are, so therefore let's pass laws or let's make interventions to fix it, we end up doing only what the politicians say. So they'll wake up and say, oh, we've got a problem with this, we all run over there. But we don't have a holistic view of the entire system and what is wrong with it.
Right.
So that then we fix it all and ensure we have a credible election at the end.
And that being said, as this debate continues, we are less than 7 months away to the general election, and the IEBC commissioners still have not been sworn into office. And now we have an entirely new debacle with a lot of people, they have a problem with the criteria that was used to pick the IEBC commissioners, as well as the nominated IEBC chair. There's issues about the fact that Wabukala, Wabukala, as well as Chebukati, I beg your pardon, as well as Ezra Chiloba come from the same community. Is that an issue in your view, Yankem?
I think it is a big issue. Definitely, it is a big issue, and it is something that we should not overlook as a country, because the fact that two top persons of IEBC, that is if Chebukati is actually given the nod by Parliament, come from the same ethnic community and from the same region. I think in terms of ethnic balancing, it is something that we need to think about as we go forward. I don't know what really informed the decision by the head of state to nominate Chebukati other than Olekina, who was obviously ahead of Chebukati to be the new IEBC chair. We'll actually be expecting the media to try and find out, get beyond the story and try and tell us exactly what informed that decision. Having said that, I think the selection panel of IEBC that was largely comprised of religious leaders did a commendable job. But what is coming out right now is something that we would want to question, because it is too early even for them to be responding to media questions, asking why so-and-so was actually put on the list or not.
Right.
If I were them, I would not be responding to media questions right now. I would actually be building my case and try to convince the country that the exercise was above board. But looking at the other names, the nominees to the IEBC, I think these are credible persons. You remember, this is an exercise that was shrouded in a lot of controversy even sending out the current commissioners led by Isaac Hassan. It was an acrimonious exercise that really cost Kenyans a lot of lives. So as a country, I think going forward, other than Chebukati, who's raising a lot of questions, I think as a country we need to grab the opportunity and appreciate that we've done, the selection panel has done its work. Let's embrace the people who have been nominated, if at all we mean well and we want to have elections in August.
All right, first of all, Susan does not agree that the selection panel did a good job.
Absolutely. I don't agree with him, and I think he's really double speaking, because one, he says he's questioning why Chebukati. And you see, if the law was that submit 2 names or even 3 names, the president has got, you know, powers to choose whoever he can choose. So you cannot be commending the religious, the selection panel, at the same time punching holes to the nominees. That's really double speaking, Crispus. So I know why he's saying that.
Chebukati wasn't the only name that was submitted for the chair's
I'm saying
position.
it wasn't
Susan
the only
must
name.
know that. I said if questions are being raised on Chebukati, let us look at it as an individual.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think it's my time now. Let me also give my input.
All right, Susan, continue.
Yeah, but again, I must say, people are just trying to create crisis, crisis after crisis after crisis. And the whole question about the chairman and even the commissioners, I don't think we're going to resolve it now. I think the whole thing is about delaying these polls.
Right.
And like you're saying that the AG is advising, oh, it will be a constitutional crisis. How many times have you ever heard our AG talk about this is going to be a constitutional crisis, this, like 2/3 gender?
Nothing.
Has it? Has it come?
Not yet.
Has it become a constitutional crisis? So I think he's helpless. And he knows very well that House, National Assembly, can do anything. He will keep on crying it will be a constitutional crisis, and it doesn't. At the end of the day, they do their things, and that is it. So they're creating crisis after crisis. Just the other day, EACC exit Philip Kinisu, who is from Bungoma and Bukusu, so to speak, enters who?
Same person.
A very
from the same,
respectable,
exactly,
religious person, you know. So who is creating this crisis? I mean, that's what you media needs to find out.
So that's the question that people need to focus on now.
And the media needs to focus on it. And again, if I were the media and I want to raise issues and concerns in regard to these electoral laws, I will look at what the Kenyan Mwananchi, the common Mwananchi is saying, the Wanjiku, the whatever tenors of this world are saying, as opposed to AG, as opposed to, I don't know, even SK Mashara or wherever, because it's Kenyans who have you know, they have delegated this authority, the popular sovereignty host within them. So they've just delegated this, and they're saying, time is up. We want to score you leaders, we want to assess you leaders, we want to bring in new leaders. And if we are going to focus on what the Senate is saying, what I don't know who is saying, not what the Kenyan Mwananchi is saying, we are going to lose the whole debate. Right. So for me, I think the media needs to find out what is happening.
Michelle, a quick one. I think credit must be given where it's due. When you look at the story by the Standard, they have been quite consistent, especially the Standard on Saturday on this particular matter. They even went ahead, even to give us the scores, blow by blow, from every member of the selection panel.
And
whether that is true or not, whether that is true or not is another question altogether.
Completely denied those
but
allegations.
You see, it doesn't
but you know, she can't actually tell you. I think the scores were leaked to the media, and that is proper use of sources actually by the Standard. Credit must be given to the Standard.
All right, guys, let's have Gathara's final comments on the IEBC matter before we move on.
I think what my two colleagues here are demonstrating is a problem with having opaque systems. Of having opaque processes. The IEBC, I mean the selection panel for the IEBC received 750 applications for both commissioner and the chair. You know, and they never told us on what criteria they used to disregard or to get out 720 of those people. You know,
Did you ask?
Do not know.
Did you ask? You know,
we do not have.
Let me finish. The media should have asked.
Actually, I do ask for it. They've never given us. This is some of the things that the media should insist. Where are the minutes of the discussions that they had, so that we can see this is why they made decision A. So we can see when they excluded these people, this is the reason they did it. When they picked these people, this is the reason they did it. It really shouldn't be just let's wait, let them spin it for us. Give us the minutes. Let us see. When you've got opaque systems, and then you hope that out of an opaque system you will get a transparent election, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. The Constitution requires the election to be transparent. That means even the people running that election need to be transparent. The systems that they use to run it need to be transparent, which is why earlier I spoke about laws that allow the IEBC to shut down media coverage of the election. Essentially, it can write to all newspapers and say, well, you can't cover it. You can't report on it. This is a law. It exists. So unless we can actually, as I keep saying, we've got to see this election cycle, or the electoral system as a whole, and to recognize that it is so full of many problems, many gaps, many areas where shenanigans can go on, that just focusing on a small bit here, whether it's just the nominees to the IEBC, or whether the BV, or what happens if it doesn't work. These are just bits and pieces of it. You're not seeing the entire system. And the entire system throughout, again, going back to Eskema Sharia, since 1992, has failed to deliver the person who actually got the most votes to deliver the presidency to him. It's failing throughout. So let's understand that we are dealing with a much bigger animal than just the small bits that we are seeing. We're operating like the 7 blind men of Hindustan.
I think the greatest problem with this country is the fact that we've made an election a matter of life and death. If we can be able to move away from that, then I think we'll have made a lot of strides. One of the greatest philosophers by the name Aristotle says, if you educate the mind and fail to educate the heart, I think you'll be doing a lot of nothing. So as a country, I think we need now to question ourselves whether we're educating our hearts as far as the election is concerned.
Susan, final word.
Yeah, for me, what I wanted to say is that the religious group need to be very, very careful. I think they're being compromised. They're becoming compliant to the system. And, for a long time, they've been very vocal in the reform process. In fact, if you are to trace the history of reforms in this country, it's been one of those sectors that have made things move. But look, they're being compromised, they're being put in positions, and when things goes that way, they can't talk. Look at now, right now we're talking about Chebukati. And it will be interesting for Kenyans to know the select panel was full of religious leaders. So what is happening? So how can they come out again and say, no, you can do that? Look at what is happening at EACC. I mean, religious leader. So I think they have to be very careful. They're being compromised, and it's one of those social institutions that people look up to for counsel, for spiritual growth, even for that hope that don't worry, tomorrow you'll have your country. Don't worry. So I think they're being gagged. The media, there have been struggles to gag the media, and now they're going to the religious.
All right. And of course, we are waiting for the vetting of the nominees for the IEBC commissioners, probably on the 18th of January or so. But let's move on away from matters election. We don't have much time. Schools reopen officially today, and Matiang'i has promised radical changes in regard to school fees and whatnot. But even bigger is impending reforms in the education sector in universities. And there's word now that there'll be degrees that will be cancelled, and that this may also affect the political class. Remember, the law requires governors to have a degree in order to get the job. In the past, we've had several governors, several politicians come to the spotlight with allegations of acquiring fake degrees. Yankem, let's begin with you, with the entire system that Matiang'i is doing, and how that may affect the political class.
I think, first of all, let me begin by saying that reforms were necessary in the education sector, because you need to look at our history from 1985 when the 844 system was introduced in the country. Coming to 2000, I think that's where the rain started beating us. And when you look at the various analyses that you guys have been able to put out in the last 2 or 3 weeks ago, since KCP results were released, then KCSE results were released, I think they speak a lot of volumes about where as a country we were and where we want to go going forward. Matiang'i must be commended, because this is a man who's seen actually that there is a crisis in the education sector. And unbeknown to many, Matiang'i is somebody who came into the system, decided that I must reform actually the education sector. And we've seen what he's been doing ever since he was appointed the CS in that particular ministry. What people don't know is the fact that Matiang'i has got a serious team behind him. One of the members, I happen to know one of them at a personal level, and this is Dr. Samuel Siringi, who lectures at UON. This is a journalist by training who's been able to cover a lot of education issues, and right now he's part of the Matiang'i's team. He's part of the team that is actually trying to speak reforms as far as the education sector is concerned. But you asked a very critical question: what will it do to the political class? I think that is a pregnant question that we must be able to address as a country. I'll be very interested to know what Matiang'i is planning to do with regards to those politicians who have acquired their degrees from outside the country, because I know that's where that discussion was going to.
Right.
I don't know how he'll be able to navigate, because I know it is as well a political minefield. All
right, guys, we don't have much time. Let's have your final feedback, Susan, on that.
I think I must first of all also commend Matiang. Matiang has done good work, and he just proved to us Kenyans that if we mean it, we can do it.
Right.
And there's nothing which is impossible. And he reminds us of the late Mishuki. When he said there will be sanity on our roads, there was sanity on our roads. So I think what Kenyans have been lacking is just that decisive leader who say it does not matter all those frustrations. Like, you remember when he started these reforms, schools banned everywhere you go, and people thought that this was the end of him.
Right.
But you know, he stood up and he continued with the fights. And so me, I think any serious Kenya must really congratulate him on what he's trying to do. And I think his expose what has showed us that as a society we've been living on kind of a draft, you know, sleeping on a draft reality, thinking that if someone passes the exam, then that determines his or her destiny.
Right.
We've really negated that other sector of talent development, trying to also pump in a lot of money, a lot of resources in extra curriculum activities like sports, like music, like theater, like all those, to try and also create opportunities for our young people.
All right.
Look at the Western country, look at America, look at England. You see, a sport like football or soccer is one of you know, the highest income earning, and yet some of those players have not probably
Been to school.
to school. And here you make parents even to pay 20,000 shillings just to buy exams so that his or her child can also
get that A.
Can get that A. So me, I think what Matiang has done is so good, and everybody should just support him.
Right.
And as far as what it will happen to politicians, I mean, they have 5 years to go back to school. I mean, either they take a break and they go back to school.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Unfortunately, Peter, we will not be hearing your comments because we're out of time. I'm very sorry, but thank you so much for joining us on set this morning. Patrick Gathara, Susan Auma, Crispus Yankem, thank you so much for joining us on our newsroom chat this morning. And many thanks for you for your comments on Twitter as well. We'll be sampling them when we come back from break. We take a short break now. We'll be back with our top stories this hour.